A while back I received an email from an opal miner at Coober Pedy asking me if I wanted to buy this 160 carat chunk of rough opal. It has beautiful colors, every color, red, green, blue, yellow. He rubbed the top of it off, and you could see the color from the top despite the potch around the edges, and there was a thick layer of potch on the back. So I've got a 160 carat opal, but how much of it is really usable opal is the question. That's the risk or reward. This side is a disaster, mostly potch, some holes in it. Kind of a bad thing. This side looks like a minefield with sand and pits and discoloration and almost no colorful opal. So should I buy it or not? Would it be worth it? Well, on the basis of the extreme beauty of this side and this extended into the stone, I decided that I would buy it. Here's a specimen. The edges are dark. This is the side that would look so good in the photographs. He embellished it a little bit with Photoshop, I suppose, but it's pretty much true. You can see that central area's got a lot of blue. At the edges, there is sand and these darker areas that are peculiar to me. The backside there is terrible. And here I've started to smooth it. It's smooth, but it's showing me the same thing I saw before I smoothed it. That is, there's a lot of potch, there are a lot of defects, cracks, holes. I've worked the top down and removed the sand from the top, and a little bit of red is showing through at the edge in that darker area. So I need to grind down a little bit further and remove this. Here I've gone down a little further, and the sand is less, and the sides look about, well, pretty much as before. I have not worked on them. I will do that. Here I'm starting to put a little bit of a curvature on the surface, and you can see the outer part is a little bit darker than the part on the right that is light. This is the front of the stone. The back of the stone has a lot of potch and that central area of color. I've marked it here to cut it in half, but I didn't cut it at that time. Here it is, pretty much finished for the moment. Beautiful color, appears to be in the center. So if I need to get to the really nice material, I have to actually cut this in half. This is the front. It's wet. It looks dark. Here it is dry, and it's lighter. So there's a nice large area on the front to make a beautiful opal that's a lighter color. And on the back, we can see that there's an area that's good, but most of it is potch. So the front has light opal in the center, but at the periphery it's dark. And I suspected that in the middle we might get the same thing. I marked this area as an area that might make a nice cabochon. So I finally marked it for cutting in half. The technique that I'm using here is different from the technique that I used in a previous video. This is what I call the rolling technique. You draw a line around the edge and you follow it and you keep going until you get all the way through. The other method that I use is what I call the push-through method. You draw a line all the way around, you put the line on the saw blade and just push, and if it goes all the way through and stays on the line, it's great. You get a nice smooth cut. But if it doesn't, you end up with one that's too thin, one that's too thick, lots of problems. So this worked out pretty well. I successfully cut it in half, and on the inside is some of the best looking dark base or darker base opal that I've ever seen. Lots of reds. You can see those scars from the rotating method. There's the back side, which is smaller than the front, but both are usable, and we just have to take it as we see it. This is the back. It weighed about 10 carats at this point, and has those marks on it. This is the front, and I want to make a cabochon, but I'm going to have to get rid of those scratch marks, and that will take some work. I used a template to mark an oval area for the cabochon and put areas that I thought I'd saw it, 3 saw marks, but as it turns out, I only needed 2 cuts and I got around the area. So this is the front. It's lighter opal, and on the back is darker opal, and I decided to make a 2-sided stone, not knowing which one would come out best. So I rounded these edges off, smoothed it, domed both sides, and this is the finished product. I'm sorry I don't have the footage of my cutting that, but this is just before I polished it. Nice light side, and the back is a darker but beautiful opal. And here is the front side on the dopstick right after I polished it. It's a really attractive stone. Here it is in different light. You can see it's really a very, very nice stone. I was sent this pendant. This is changing the subject, but the person who owned it wanted me to change the opal to something better. So I used the back part, the small half of the specimen. I said this would make a great replacement stone, but I have to cut it down, shape it, and then I have to put the dome on the flat side here, the flat side with all the scratches from my rotating technique of cutting it in half. But I was shaping it here, but the ultimate thing is to this is sorry, this is a little too fast. I'm not nervous, but I'm just shaping it a little. There's nothing significant going on here. Please avert your eyes. This is the side I want to use, and once again, this chattery, fast motion of me smoothing it and just getting it to about the right size. It's at about the right size where I can size it for the stone that I'm replacing. I don't really need this whole thing, so I marked an area and cut it with a trim saw, and the top part, the large part, I'm going to use to replace the opal in this setting, and I think it'll make a nice replacement. When you're making an opal pendant, you have to orient the stone so that the color faces forward, and that is about the way it ought to be. So I'm going to make the oval with that orientation. I'm smoothing the edges around, and I'm approximately the right shape, but and size, but we need to put a dome on this back. It's flat, the edges are thick, so the first thing to do, realizing that the center part of the stone is going to be the surface, it's going to be the dome, I have to go and lower the edges, make the edges thinner, and leave the center part untouched for the moment. I'm grinding the edge down, trying to get it down so that we can put a dome on in the center where it should be. And here we can see that it's not quite dome shaped. I've got a dome on it, but it's a little bit of a problem. Here it is dry, and it looks good, looks dome shaped, and wetting it simulates a polish. So it looks really good, but there's one little area that right there, it's a scratch. So I eventually worked on it, smoothed it out, polished it, set it in the opal, set it in the pendant, and I think it's pretty successful. So here are the two stones. This is the back side of the big stone. That's the front side of the big stone. And here it is, the back side. And we got a total of about 26 carats here, and along with about 13 other carats in scrap, and I think I did well overall.